It was quite a hectic weekend here in Nigeria as we had some very bad news about some Nigerians who had unfortunately passed as a result of the stampede caused by the Nigerian Customs Service supposed goodwill. And these are some of the areas we'll be focusing today when we look at which way Nigeria. Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Central. I am Olive Emodi.
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast Central again, and I'm Joe Hansen. For me, most importantly, we'll take a look at the government, most importantly, the President, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the one known as President Bola Tinubu, who indeed convened stakeholders in the economy to speak with them just yesterday night, trying to see how they could drive the economy forward. Most importantly, now that the Naira is not looking too strong when it comes to the dollar. But then again, aside from looking at the economic reforms, which is trying to, gain its stability, we'll also take a look at many other stories that indeed trended this past weekend. Well, guess who joins us as well for the big stories when it comes to the headlines? Adebola is here with us. Good morning to you on a Monday morning.
Good morning, Olive and Joe. Yes, happy Monday morning to both of you. It's good to be here once again, despite the issues in Nigeria, of course.
Well,
I can't help but to mention that. Well, yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah,
it is good to be here. So much negative news have happened over the weekend, but I think one ray of hope we're looking at is the seeming rebound of the Naira. We're hoping that the Naira, we're urging the Naira, keep fighting, you can do this.
It's getting its strength.
Yes. Something to be excited about. Another thing that quite tickles my fancy this morning on the show is how you and Joe Hansen seem to be wearing
blue
matching colors.
That's what it is.
Well, at least I'm wearing black.
You didn't get the memo, right?
And there is blue and black. There are only two colors on this set, blue and black, and I'm wearing one of them.
Did you get the memo?
I did.
At all.
I just wanted to stand out, Don't, when the crowd is going left, just
you go right.
Exactly.
Nice one.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that we'll be looking into, the big stories, but I'd like to ask you, Adebola, which of the stories would you say caught your eye the most over the weekend?
Man, it's got to be the stampede at Bariga, where the customs office were, selling at a giveaway price, half bag of rice, a bag of rice. It was gathered that about 7 people died, among which, was a pregnant woman who was pushed into the gutter in the process of people trying to, get across, the queue and then get their own share of the rice being shared. I mean, it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, for people to lose their lives, in a bid to trying to get something to feed on. So that for me would be the most tragic, story over the weekend.
Very, very, very sad indeed, I must say. Nobody would hear or see that story and not be touched in one way or the other just because of food. It's an irony for me. You left your home to go get food for your family. You never came back. Very sad. Very, very sad indeed. But then again, we have so much to talk about. We also have the NLC. They are divided amongst themselves with the TUC as well. We hear 65 member faction have said they are not going to join the purported strike, which would kick off on the 27th. And there's a lot of back and forth. But guess what? We have all of these and much more to discuss in the course of this morning's breakfast show. Let's bring to you the top stories and see what the headlines would look like this Monday morning.
NLC threatens total shutdown if attacked. What exactly is the strength of the NLC in 2024?
We'll find out. Qatar drama, President Tinubu to visit UAE. Recall, just before then, they said they would not accept his visitation.
Yeah, so they've come to clarify that. And now, still talking about President Tinubu, he sets up the Economic Advisory Recovery Committee. Edo gubernatorial elections as well. Aftermath as candidates emerge. Three parties, it seems. Or three candidates.
Absolutely. ECOWAS lifts sanctions on Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And what does this mean? We'll talk about all of this and much more on Breakfast Central.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines here on News Central TV. I am Adebola Adeduba. Breakfast Headlines begins here in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has set up an economic advisory committee comprising the federal government, sub-nationals and private sector. The president announced the setting up of the committee after he had a meeting with some key stakeholders at the State House, Abuja, on Sunday evening. Qatar has announced that it will indeed host the Business and Investment Forum proposed by Nigerian President Bola Tinubu during his upcoming visit to the Arab nation. The surprising turn of events comes after Qatar initially declined to host the forum, citing scheduling conflict with its ministers of commerce and industry, Mohammed Bin Hamad Al-Thani. A former member of the Ghanaian and ECOWAS Parliament, Frederick Opare Anta, has thrown his weight behind the decision of the ECOWAS authorities' heads of state and government to suspend sanctions imposed on the three states of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. A former vice president of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, has asked President Bola Tinubu to take lessons from Argentina's Javier Milei reforms. Atiku said Argentina and Nigeria closed the last quarter of the year 2023 on a similar path of economic downturn, adding that both leaders inherited a disoriented economy, but both applied different measures to recovery. The former vice president said what Milei did to return his country to a place where investors are starting to believe should serve as a lesson to Nigeria's Bola Tinubu. The Nigeria Labour Congress says there is no going back on its planned 2 days nationwide protest over the economic hardship in the country. The NLC says this is even as it has uncovered plans by agents of government to cause violence against its members during the protests. Following the current economic hardship in Nigeria, a coalition of over 80 civil society organizations has called for constructive engagement as the only solution rather than destructive tendencies. The group, under the aegis of Lagos People's Assembly, says while it recognizes the right of labor union to embark on protest or strike, the trauma of the 2020 EndSARS protests, with its damage to limbs, destruction of life and public and private properties, still haunts the country. The private residence of Minister of State in the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Dr. Maria Mahmood, was razed by fire on Sunday afternoon. While the emergency response was slow, it was also gathered that nothing could be saved from the property located at number 9 Justice Roslyn Ukeji Close in the highbrow area of Asokoro. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Olive and Joe.
Thank you so much, Debola, for those stories. Very importantly, we'll take a look at one of them, which has to do with the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar advising the current President Bola Tinubu, to take a cue from what happened in Argentina. But then again, I think everyone has one or two things to say. Don't forget, the former head of state also had visited the president last week, General Yakubu Gowon, which has indeed caused a lot of conversations online in the social media space. People are saying that it was exactly the same visitation that took place when the former president, right before President Bola Tinubu took to reins or power. And when he visited, he also asked for more time during the time of President Buhari. And yet, Nigerians didn't see any changes. So, are we going to have the same circumstance? Well, I don't know what your thoughts are, but then again, it's good to proffer solutions. After all, don't forget that the APC-led government had said, don't just talk, but proffer solutions. Give your suggestions. So I think it's rife that all those in power should start making suggestions to see how we can get out of the doldrums.
Well, I mean, the president at this point in time needs all the advice he can lay his hands on. I mean, every word of advice, encouragement, recommendation, would come in handy. I'm hoping beyond the advice, being given to him, or advice has been given to him by different quarters, I'm hoping he really, really looks at the economy as to factors, making us spiral into inflation, what's causing a hike in prices of goods and services, and then a better way of, when they have to give out, share, grains of rice or whatsoever to people, maybe a different structure should be employed, and then so that we can avoid, a similar case of what happened last week at Bariga when people were stampeded in the bid to get rice. So time will tell, like you say. Time again will tell in terms of how long these hardship would endure, and if indeed the reforms the government is working on, will come out to bear good fruits.
Very
All right.
sad.
Adebola, thank you very much for bringing us the news and for sharing your thoughts as well. We'll see you again at 9 a.m., I beg your pardon, when Breakfast Central is done.
Good to be here.
All right. And we'll go into our top stories this morning, but just to mention that you can be a part of any of the conversations we're having this morning by tweeting at News Central TV on all social media platforms. Remember that we'll also be opening the phone lines at some point when we're reviewing the papers, and then you get to share your thoughts on any of the big stories that we'll be looking at on the front pages of the newspapers. This is still Breakfast Central. We'll be right back in a moment. The Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, has told the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, to shelve its planned nationwide protest on February 27th and 28th, 2024. In a letter to the NLC Council, Femi Falana, SAN, Fagbemi said that the federal government had reasonably complied with its Memorandum of Understanding with organized labor, even as certain areas of the terms of agreement had been inhibited by unforeseen circumstances, adding that the planned industrial action could amount to contempt in view of a restraining order of the National Industrial Court.
Well, recall that the NLC leadership had accused the federal government of refusing to implement the MOU, which touched on workers' welfare, among other agreements. The Labour leaders warned of a total shutdown if attacked, emphasizing that Nigerians won't be easily intimidated. They maintained their stance on its nationwide protest for food, safety and dignity, while condemning violent suppression. However, the Trade Union Congress, TUC, has withdrawn from the NLC's decision, saying it was not carried along. Let's take a look at the letter that the NLC indeed released just yesterday. It says, as the state prepares to unleash violence on us. Now, that's the theme. It's a press statement that they dropped yesterday during the evening hours, and they said would want to inform Nigerians that the state has perfected plans to attack our peaceful rallies across the country. One of the groups being primed to attack our peaceful rallies by a nebulous name, Nigeria Civil Society Forum, NCSF. NCSF is one of the emergency groups put together, funded, promoted and remote controlled by government to cause violence against our members for electing to peacefully protest against the hunger in the land. So it goes ahead to explain that in light of this, the Nigerian Labour Congress and civil society allies are moving ahead with the protest against economic hardship and insecurity in line with the decision of the National Executive Council. But one key thing here is what we find in one of the statements that it makes in the letter. And let's go, yes, exactly. Just take a look. It says, once again, we advise those waiting in the wings to unleash violence on us that this is not about the NLC, but about Nigerians who are saying enough is enough, about the people who have resolved not to be further pushed into the pit of misery and hopelessness while a few live in obscene luxury at our collective expense. And some other parts of the entire letter, the press release there, the NLC is indeed stating clearly, as signed by its president, Joe Ajero, that if they are attacked, they will not cease from shutting down every single thing.
What can they really shut down, if I'm being honest? What can the NLC really shut down? I ask this because someone did say that, just like they say with Manchester United, that when Ferguson left the club, he left with its glory. That it looks like he left with its glory. Some would argue, I mean, say what you want about Adams Oshiomhole. Many would argue that the moment he left the NLC has never been the same, right? He may not have been the best president, NLC chairman, but he may not have been the best person or the best politician, the best leader, but as a chairman, they had more respect. The NLC had more regard and more respect. If they called for a strike, people would show up, people would turn up, people would go out and protest with them. Now, we don't see that happening anymore. What happens, we see is they call a strike. A few hours later, they've gone into a closed-door meeting with the government, and after that, they've called off the strike. And it's almost like we're moving in circles. The NLC has been seen to be moving in circles. And many would agree or argue that the NLC has become largely politicized. So I don't know if they have the influence that they think that they have to be able to shut down the economy at this point. Because Nigerians are trying to make ends meet. You're not going to tell people that are already struggling, that are already suffering, finding it difficult, you don't tell them to go on a strike and shut their businesses. Nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going. I mean, you won't. If I were a regular businessman, I'm trying to make ends meet. People are going to die because they're queuing and they're being trampled on at the Nigerian Customs Service office because they're trying to get 25,000 naira bag of rice for 25 kg bag of rice for 10,000 naira. These people that can barely afford to feed are the people you want to use as a bargaining chip against the government to say that if you don't do this, we'll shut down the economy. So you tell the petrol stations to close, you will tell the business owners to shut down. In which country where people are trying to eat? I think the NLC needs to come off its high horse and face the reality of what is. Nigerians are suffering and they will not be used as a pawn in whatever politicized games the NLC is doing with the federal government.
It's a tough one. I think they're stuck between going ahead and not going ahead. So one thing that's quite remarkable about this entire strike is that, one, the NLC, along with its ally, of course, it's I'll call it a member, the TUC, had agreed that this party will be a joint project. Let's call it a project now, of course. They would go straight into it and ensure that they make their demands known to the federal government and it must be met. However, in proceeding with this agreed plan for the 27th and 28th, which they called it as just a test run. In other words, they're telling the federal government that we're just going to do this for just 2 days, just to get you prepared of what we can do should you not accede, or better still, should you not yield to our concerns. But the TUC, on the other hand, says, you know what, let's shelve this strike, we're no longer interested. And the NLC says, okay, that's fine. If you're no longer interested, we will go ahead. The big question now, or what we stand to see, is that there is a divide even amongst the NLC.
What Chinua Achebe says, meant when he says things fall apart, the center cannot hold. A house divided within itself
it can't stand.
So, but beyond even that, not to disregard the intention or the spirit behind what the NLC is trying to do. Because the truth is, Nigerians are facing a tough time. And a nationwide strike, or it's within, the ambit of, or it's not illegal for the NLC to be able to hold the government to account, to be able to say, you know what, until we see a change, because Nigerians are going through perilous times, until we see a change, we will shut things down. I'm not saying that that's not a noble cause, but the sad part is, before you get to this point, this is the point where Nigerians need NLC the most. But because they have cried wolf previous times, it will be very hard for Nigerians to take them seriously again. They've missed too many chances to be able to make the impact that they should have been able to make in Nigeria. Too many missed chances. So I don't know if there's really any more time or any more space left for them to be able to really cause the change that they hope they will.
They can only think about it, but then again, they do have few hours to respond, because the federal government has indeed said they should shelve the planned strike, even though its president, Joe Ajero, says that he's still going to go ahead and ensure that the strike holds. It's just for 2 days. But Nigerians, what do you think about this?
2 days is not just.
Would you accept? Because a few Nigerians are saying, no, they're not relating with this strike, because things are not going easy, just as you've also mentioned. And they don't think that this is what they need at this time. So the NLC would have between now and midnight to rethink if they would go ahead with the planned strike for tomorrow and, of course, the next. But if they go ahead, the federal government is warning that they will not accept if anything goes awry or goes wrong. So they do have timing.
And maybe we should ask
they just need to make their choices.
What side of the divide you're on. Do you think that it's a good idea for Nigerians, through the ages of the NLC, to go on strike? Do you think that now is the right time for Nigerians to go on the planned protest or a strike? Let us know what your thoughts are at News Central TV. We'll take a few of your tweets, and also we'll be opening the phone lines at some point to allow you calling. When we're reviewing the papers, you can call and share your thoughts regarding the NLC's planned protest. But let's move to our next story.
Absolutely. Well, let's go straight to our next story and let you in on this one. That President Bola Tinubu has set up an economic advisory committee comprising the federal government, that's 1, the sub-nationals, that's 2, and the private sector, making 3. The president announced the setting up of the committee after he held a meeting with some key stakeholders at the State House Abuja on Sunday evening. Now, among those who were at the meeting with the president are the following: Aliko Dangote, Rabiu Samad, Wale Tinubu, Tony Elumelu, and of course other selected leaders of the private sector.
Tinubu said that the goal of the advisory committee is to provide additional efforts in stabilizing the economy and ensuring the best economic future for Nigerians. Let's quickly run you through the names of the committee members. You can see that we have the list on the screen, and we have Aliko Dangote, Femi Otedola, Amina Meina, Boye Olusonya, Shegun Ajayi Kadir, Tony Elumelu, Bismarck Rewani, Samala Zubeiru. We also have Innocent Chukuma, and we have Jubril Adewale Tinubu, Governor Soludo of Anambra State, Governor Dapo Abiodun. We have also CBN Governor Olayemi Cardozo, Kola Adeshino, Abdul Kabir Aliu, and Abdul Samad Rabiu. These are some of the names that we're seeing that are part of the they're part of the committee, and we hope that it's something that's not just talk, because to be honest, at this point, Nigerians are desperate for a change. We don't really care how, who, or what is done. We just want to see that the life of Nigerians, the average Nigerian, is improved, because we haven't seen these levels of hunger, right? We thought we had seen the worst of it during the buying Naira saga, when people were buying Naira. But I dare say that I think it's worse now.
It is.
I think it is actually worse than it was when we had to use Naira to buy the Naira. So whatever they need to do, I'm hoping, these are some of the biggest and the brightest minds in Nigeria. These are people who have run businesses in Nigeria for years and, have turned in very huge profits. We're hoping that these fine minds will be able to come together and prefer solutions from the experience over the years to be able to get us out of this economic stronghold that we found ourselves in.
One of the things the president has said in his statement while they met, some of the bright minds, some of the respected individuals or persons who were invited to meet with the president just yesterday evening, they came out of the meeting and they were heard. For instance, Aliko Dangote was saying it was a good conversation they had with the president. They looked at all aspects of the economy, and hopefully they will be able to make something out of it. The president himself said that he just wants to try. It's better to try than not to try at all. So in other words, the president is saying they must try all that they can, all angles, try all methods, try all forms to ensure it works. Whatever you might say, I had said this on breakfast last week, that in as much as many would say, oh, it seems they are clueless, I would not want to agree with that, because I also think part of owning a business or running a business is if a method doesn't work, you might try something else. Like they say, it's madness to try the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And here is the president trying something quite different, which I must say, well, yeah, kudos, not bad. And I think if it works, or should it work, then it would also prove that it's high time we start something new. In other words, in all aspects of the economy, not just looking at, okay, it has to be the same way we've been doing it. It has to be the same way we've been making sure that the economy works. It has to be the same way we've been driving the economy. But this, let's see what will come out of it. Hopefully, Nigerians will be able to heave a sigh of relief. That's just what we're saying. But then again, let us know what your thoughts are. We're just bringing to you the latest story so far on what's happening here in Nigeria. And we'll also let you in on this particular one, letting you think with your mind of perception. Let us know what your thoughts are when we open up the phone lines and you can share your thoughts with us. In the meantime, Olive is prepared and set to bring to us what is happening, especially her thoughts on which way Nigeria. But we'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring that to you. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. The West African Regional Bloc is lifting most sanctions imposed on Niger over last year's coup in a new push for dialogue following a series of political crises that have rocked the region in recent months. A no-fly zone and border closures were among the sanctions being lifted with immediate effect. The president of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Commission, Omar Aliyu Toure, said on Saturday.
The lifting of the sanctions is, I quote, on purely humanitarian grounds, they say, to ease the suffering caused as a result. Toure told reporters after the bloc's summit in the Nigerian capital. This morning, we're joined by Frederick Opare-Ansah. He's a former member of Parliament, Ghana and ECOWAS, and campaign manager for the ruling New Patriotic Party for the 2024 presidential election in Ghana. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. I think my first question will be your reactions on the lifting of the sanctions. Is it timely, or would you say it came in too little too late?
Thank you very much. I really would have wished that perhaps at the beginning of the crisis, the authority of heads of states might have perhaps chosen the path of dialogue rather than the immediate imposition of sanctions. But as we always say, better late than never. Although it is a little late in coming, it is still a good gesture. And I hope that the leaders of the three nations would see the gesture coming from the authority and reciprocate such gesture. You know, when these things are about to happen, I'm sure the leadership in the sub-region, they do pick the signals, and that is perhaps the time that they should have moved and not wait until the crisis deepened till this level before coming in with the easing of the sanctions. So it would have been better not to have even instituted the sanctions in the first place. But the best for the peoples of this great community would have been for the coup d'etats not to have happened at all.
Well, a lot of Pan-Africanists have come together in review of what just took place from ECOWAS, where they have, taken back the original decisions on these countries, especially looking at the coup that did happen. Many have said that ECOWAS should have taken time to review what their decisions would cause the regional bloc. For instance, the insecurity that's taking place in the sub-African region, they should have looked at it carefully. They should have also looked at the no-fly zone, how would it also affect other countries, for example, like Nigeria. And some of the experts have said that ECOWAS was way too fast to make that decision. What do you think, as a regional bloc, ECOWAS can learn from this? What can they learn from making a hasty decision just as that? And what does this mean for the regional body going forward?
Well, I can, to some extent, understand the urgency that the leadership of the regional bloc attached to the crisis that was beginning to rear its head. If you consider the fact that prior to COVID, and perhaps the time I was in ECOWAS back in 2020 was when I left, all the 15 countries had constitutional governments duly elected by the people. But suddenly, right after the crisis of COVID and the Russian-Ukraine crisis, what you see is we currently have 4 out of these 15 countries now having military leadership due to coup d'etats. And so ECOWAS might have felt that it needed to react promptly and decisively to avert the trend that was beginning to show up. But clearly, the decisions did affect the community people adversely, and also affected some countries, like you were saying, like Nigeria, for instance, in ways that was never intended. The lessons here, as I said earlier, is for the community leadership to pay attention and have early warning systems in place to ensure that all the constitutional tinkering that we see, a nation that has a constitution that allows 2-term presidency, before you see the president is convening parliament and trying to extend their term of office. This is the point where ECOWAS needs to set up. It's their colleague at that time, a member of the authority who might perhaps be doing this tinkering. And because of the fraternity that gets developed amongst this leadership, it seems to be usually difficult for them to try and bring their colleagues to order. But this is one thing that they need to learn, is to ensure that at that point, they really bring their colleagues to order and stop the tinkering before it results into any kind of crisis. Then again, when these coup d'etats have already happened, it is important for the regional leadership to immediately open up dialogue channels. And doesn't mean that they are condoning that action, but to see the best way in which they can return the particular country back to constitutional rule and order. And so what I may describe, if you will, as rash decisions should be a thing of the past. We should let cooler heads prevail and take decisions that can stand the test of time.
I mean, these are the expectations, what you've said about the ECOWAS calling their colleagues to order. But do you think that this will happen? Because many have called on the ECOWAS as, they've called the ECOWAS somewhat slow or doing some form of selective justice, choosing what to speak about and where to look away. They have said that the ECOWAS is pushing for democracy, but hasn't really supported the democratic installation of governments in different parts of the continent. So do you genuinely believe that the ECOWAS going forward will be able to live up to what is expected of it from citizens on the continent?
Well, if we've learned anything from the current crisis or impasse, it is clear that we cannot take any of the community countries for granted. If we do not call out people who start, in quotes, misbehaving, then we could have a similar crisis. These countries, the three countries that form the new bloc, have really shown what is potentially possible in the region. They have set a certain precedent, and it will therefore be in the interest of the community leadership to ensure this never happens again. Indeed, we are not even out of the crisis situation yet. It is just the gesture that the regional body has extended, and we are hoping that they do respond positively by also rescinding their decision to exit the bloc. So in future, when leadership sees the potential for such things happening, I think they will learn the lessons from what we've seen here and move in as quickly as possible. The travel distances between the regions is not that difficult to move around these days. You have jets and airlines all over. Previously, it was quite difficult for some of the countries to travel from one place to another. But it's pretty easy these days to bring this leadership together pretty quickly to take decisions. We now have Zoom facilities like you and I are having this chat now. And if it becomes necessary, I believe that within a matter of hours, the leadership should be able to convene even a virtual meeting and take decisions to avert these potential troubles that we are seeing today. So leadership will have to act and act decisively and quickly, and in a manner that will continue to preserve the integration that we've achieved for almost this almost half century now. It's very important it's preserved.
I think my final question in this regard would be that, do you think that this lifting of sanctions, even though they've clearly explained that the sanctions that have been lifted is to sort of aid humanitarian services, especially as we approach Lent and Ramadan, do you think that this would in any way affect the direction that the military leadership in these countries, do you think it would affect their next decisions regarding maybe transitioning back to civil rule or coming back to the negotiation table?
Well, I think it will only make sense for them to take advantage of this window that has been provided to re-engage and come back to the negotiating table. And I know it's also not been easy on them and their peoples. And these things do have a certain political balance because within the countries, you have all kinds of pressure groups also existing and mounting the necessary pressures on these governments. So if the people and their civil society organizations and others begin to think that you are just being intransigent and do not want to take advantage of this opportunity that's given you, it could bring pressure on their own administrations and perhaps lead to demonstrations and counter coup d'etats, So it will be in their interest to take advantage of this situation. Remember that none of these countries have a direct access to a seaport. A friend of mine, I was having a chat over the weekend, and he pointed out to me that if ECOWAS is not careful, the new bloc that's emerging, may be looking for one of the countries with access to the sea to come join them, and mention the number of the countries which still remain in ECOWAS as perhaps the weaker links, if you will, for these countries to get them to join them, to have direct access to the port. And at that point, it will become very difficult to now get them to reintegrate. So as long as they have been staying landlocked, it means that access to their foreign imports has been a very major challenge. Where human development is today, when a country has to survive for months without having access to seaports, you can imagine the challenges that this brings onto them. There is only so much that you can have air transport deliver into a country, and the people would by now be really, really suffering. So it is very good that the ECOWAS has taken off these sanctions. Of course, we are aware that the individual sanctions remain in place, and that is for good reason. But it is incumbent now upon the leadership of these countries to begin to take advantage as quickly as possible and return to the negotiating table.
I'm sure with your last comments talking about landlocked and not having access to the ports, many also purported that there are fears, rising fears for Senegal, which indeed we do know they do have a current situation at hand. President Macky Sall not allowing the elections to take place, and many fearing that it could be another coup. Also here, there are rumors in Nigeria as well concerning that. But my final question to you, let's take a look at one of the countries that have indeed had this sanction lifted. I'm talking about Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso has gone ahead to form an alliance with Russia. And we've seen Burkina Faso making strides and making statements that they are about to change the concept of how Africa should be run or governed before they look at civilian rule. Finally, and very short if you can do this for us, what do you make of this, looking at the fact that a country like Burkina Faso is already looking at alliances with countries like Russia and China? Do you think it will make it any easier for a country like that, amongst the other three, to come back to ECOWAS now that they've struck a deal?
Well, I do not think an alliance with Russia or China should impede the decision by Burkina Faso to return to ECOWAS. I think those things are more in respect of the alliances, the previous alliances that they had, especially with regards to their former colonial masters, France. Don't forget that these countries, apart from belonging to ECOWAS, also belong to UEMOA, which is the body of the former colonies of France and within ECOWAS. That I can understand may pose a challenge for them returning to their body, but not ECOWAS, because ECOWAS, as you know, is not formulated based on countries' alliances to external partners. These partners that they are creating alliances with is more in respect of trade and, if you will, the support they will receive from these countries in terms of aid and all that. We all do have that. Nigeria, Ghana. Nigeria itself, some time ago, was forging its own alliance with China, and that never stopped Nigeria from playing the leading role that it does in ECOWAS. So I don't think that particular direction is going to affect a decision by Burkina Faso or any of the other countries in rejoining ECOWAS. These alliances exist already within the community countries, between them and individual external partners. So it should not in any way affect the decision to return.
All right, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out to join us this morning here on Breakfast Central, former member of ECOWAS Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Ansah. Thank you. All right, we'll go for that very short break. As a matter of fact, let's introduce you to what we have next on Breakfast Central, and that will be Which Way Nigeria, taken from a 1984 theme song by the late Reverend Sodi Okosu, where questions were asked, a song became a hit, but yet the answers still not gotten.
A few days ago, we saw how citizens fought for their lives as they struggled to get the 25 kg rice shared by the Nigerian Customs Service, an initiative that the Customs Service launched to alleviate the hardship faced by indigent Nigerians. They queued for hours, hoping to be able to get some food for their families. I heard of a couple who stood in line as well, hoping that either one of them or both of them could end up getting food for their family. How did their story end? With the loss of the man's life due to the stampede. I saw another man share how he went there to hopefully get food for his family, as he could no longer afford to feed them. He mentioned how his daughter was about to return to the university and things had been tough for his family. There was also another report of a pregnant woman who unfortunately was pushed into the gutter. So not only did this woman die, or not only has this generation been affected, but even the coming generation. Reports have it that about 7 persons died because they were trying to get food for themselves and their families. How tragic. How tragic to think of the people who would become widowers, the children who would become without a father or mother. Nigeria has really happened to them. As some sit comfortably in their homes, thousands of our fellow citizens grapple with the harsh realities of destitution every single day. A staggering percentage of our population now live below the poverty line. Despite being blessed with abundant natural resources, many Nigerians continue to face insurmountable challenges in accessing basic necessities such as food, clean water, healthcare, electricity. The cycle of poverty is a complex web that traps generations, robbing them of opportunities and hope. Our parents often reminded us of how they had better days. Do you remember the tales of back in the good old days? Those tales were never ending. We thought these were just old people's gist. Alas, we have become our parents with our own back in the good old days stories happening before our own eyes. It almost feels like we've lived several realities within such a short time. Our realities would make for a blockbuster reality TV series, and maybe we will name it Only in Nigeria. So, season 1 of Only in Nigeria will feature the theatrics of Nigerian lawmakers. It's just that I fear it might have to spill over to season 2 because someone in the National Assembly will use maize to fight. People's parents will exchange blows on national television. They will plan impeachments and decamp every other day, maybe every 3 market days. Some will even burn down the assembly complex. Some of them will be in all the episodes because being a part of the National Assembly is their retirement plan. It's a lifetime service. They will drive really luxury cars and then receive prayers via emails. Only in Nigeria will be too sweet. We will then dedicate another season to Nigerian politicians who like to shout about democracy, but they think that governance is their sole right. the ones who find that their desire to lead supersedes their political party's ideology. And they are probably right, because most of these political parties have no ideology to begin with. They are often different sides of the same coin, so much so that you can go to bed in one party and you wake up in another. In fact, these days, you can have one leg in a political party and another leg in another political party. After all, they are one big happy family. And then, a few episodes of this season will be dedicated to political party primary elections, and there are multiple winners. This is one of the most laughable things lately, don't you think? So, they conduct party primaries, and at least 3 winners emerge from each party. Conducting a primary school head boy election has more structure than conducting a political party election. And if you cannot conduct a party election successfully, how can you convince us that when your party finally finishes its family fights, and you've decided on the one person to represent you, that this party can provide the leadership that the state deserves? I pray thee tell. A special season will be titled Rise and Fall. The rise and fall of the NLC, TUC, and the Naira. What is the NLC doing? They call for strikes every 3 market days and then call them off right after going into close talks with the federal government. Many will argue that they are no longer taken seriously, and one wonders what their impact is regarding holding the government accountable for the well-being of the Nigerian worker. And then there's the Naira that has been falling and falling like Alicia Keys sang, but not in love. Well, the good news is that it's rising again. I can go on and on and on about this interesting reality TV series titled Only in Nigeria, but I'll stop here. The president has set up his economic recovery team, bringing some of the finest minds together. It is my hope that we see some impact. One day, it go better. Good morning, Nigeria.
And it's time for us to bring to you a series of the stories that we've brought to you thus far this first hour here on Breakfast Central. Let's take you through what it has been like in the first hour. ECOWAS lift sanctions on Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger Republic. We did have a guest, a former parliamentarian who indeed shared his thoughts. Tinubu sets up Economic Advisory Recovery Committee. Let's see the way forward for Nigeria as we are on the way to recovery plan. And of course, with Nigeria, the series that will never stop. Like someone said, is sure up there in the heavens. They're tuning in 247. What's coming up next on Breakfast Central, the second hour, no doubt. Edo Guba elections aftermath as candidates emerge, 3-3-3, and then lead into 1-1 apiece. Programs to watch later today, we've got Politics HQ, we'll tell you all about that. And don't forget, up next, get your fingers itchy and start dialing. Newspaper front pages will begin.
If you're just joining us, it's time for us to take you through the front pages of the papers. Earlier on, we did mention that NLC was talking about a planned protest, and we're asking Nigerians, do you think now is the time for a planned protest or not? Now that we're reviewing the papers, the phone lines will be open. Let us know what your thoughts are by calling the numbers on your TV screen. Now, joining us today to review the papers is Public Affairs Analyst Dotun Ojon. It's always a delight to have you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Happy Monday.
I like the smile on your face. Regardless of all that's happening, you have this huge smile that just lights up the studio and makes us feel like everything will be okay in Nigeria.
Oh, thank you, because Happy Monday is different from Happy Weekend. Happy Monday is a greeting.
Yeah.
Happy Weekend is a request. So I will not hear Happy Weekend today, so I'm just happy. It's just going to end a Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Okay. The only problem is he doesn't come on Fridays. I would have told you, as soon as we start the show, I'll just say,
Happy Weekend.
And that's true.
All right, let's begin with this Nigeria newspaper and let's see what's on the front page of this Nigeria. Fire raises residents of FCT Minister of State Mahmoud. A number of us saw the clips on social media. That was a very sad one. Market cartels to blame for rise in prices of food items, says Consumer Protection Council. We'll come back to this story. Tinubu sets up a tripartite economic advisory committee. 7 die in stampede during 10,000 naira rice distribution by customs in Lagos. AGF Falana clash over NLC planned nationwide protest. No going back on demonstration, Labour insists. Borno spends 40 billion naira on IDP's feeding program, according to Zulu. The home wasn't even planned. Anyway, Ohane is a 6 go-once apology over civil war comments. There's so many stories that are jumping out at me here, but I think the two stories I'd like you to react to would be, of course, the NLC planned protest and market cartels to blame for rise in prices of food items. And I'm asking you, I want you to react to this because last week somebody called me and said, please, I want you to use your platform to talk about the rise in the cost of goods and services, that the moment people hear that the Naira has risen and, they automatically increase their prices. I'll get your reactions, but let's hear from Stanley calling from Benue. Good morning, Stanley. Thank you for calling. Please go ahead with your comments. And please turn down the volume of your TV screen, Stanley. Okay, just to mention for our callers, we might have to disconnect the call if you call and your TV is still on because it interferes with the communication. So please always remember to turn down the volume of your TV set completely and call in again, all right? I don't know that we still have Stanley, but of course we'll take more calls as they come in. So let's get your reaction to this, Stanley.
Okay, let's begin. The essence of government is to regulate, is to make law and punish where necessary. And any community where the people discover that the government cannot do any of this, it is innate in us to always take advantage in such community. So we have identified, and it's not just about food. Even this dollar and naira issue came to this point because it was made known, even by government officials, that there are people, racketeers within the system who just want to buy this thing, hoard it, and resell later. It's a system that has been in force for as long as I can remember. Greed has crept into our community, and everybody tries to make profit from the process. So the duty of government is not just to rally the community against these people who want to perpetrate evil. It's also to punish them where necessary, to serve as deterrent to other people. But there's always this complexity that government paints about, we cannot have our eyes all over the community. Today, we have our eyes all over the community when it's time for election to hold. It's as bad as in 2019, in the face of Boko Haramism, there was election in Borno State. So when we have issues that directly concern the continuation of governance, that directly touch the people in power, there's always solution. But when we have issues that have to do with the community people, suddenly Nigeria becomes a very complex community. It still goes back to the doorstep of government that these people, you have the intelligence to know them, to prosecute them, to use them as an example for other people not to buy into that same crime. A governor wakes up in the morning, the first thing, a president wakes up in the morning, the first thing he reads is the security report. In fact, he does not even have the time to read all the newspaper because most often this takes his time. So the essay or advisor just starts and highlight, Oga will read this and this. So it shows that to a very reasonable degree, the man that is sitting as the chief executive officer of a state or the nation has access to the necessary information that you and I do not even get to have access to.
Okay, I want to give a defense that I've heard from a number of business people because I wanted to buy a bag. I went to price a bag of rice, and they told me it was 90,000 naira. And I said to the woman, but it was 80 something. Yeah, it was 80 a few days ago. And she said, yes, because the strength of the naira dropped. I said, so the stock in your shop, you did not buy it. You bought it when the strength of the naira was stronger than what it is now. Why do you feel the need to increase? And she said, because when I need to make further purchases, I need to be able to match what the current market rate is saying. Should that argument hold water?
The reality is that there's a communal cooperation, conspiracy to ensure that Nigeria does not move forward. And it's a conspiracy between the leaders and the led. Unconsciously, we run into these conspiracies. When people do not believe in their country, it's as a result of a conspiracy. When leaders do not give an opportunity for people to believe in their country, then they begin to take advantage at every point in time. See, the kind of leadership Nigeria needs is not only transformational, it's a decisive leadership that will tell you, do not cross this line. If you cross this line, there will be consequences. And you know what will happen? If you dare cross the line, there will be consequences. Not the tea kind of party, tea party leadership where everything goes. Let me cite an example. When the former governor of Lagos, I think Ambode, he was trying to ensure that people do not cross at the popular Ojota in Lagos. Then he built something like a wall there. In our own presence, people will get there and break down these places because they just want to cross.
All right, hold that thought. Stanley is called back from Benwick. Hello, Stanley. Good morning. Please go ahead with your comments.
Good morning.
Please go ahead with your comments. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well. Stanley, can you please go ahead with your comments?
I heard what you people are discussing. I heard what you people are discussing.
And here you go on. Go on.
So from we in the Borno State, I have my view right now. Yeah, well. Right now, I will contribute to my own view like this, because all we saying that government is helping us. Government did not do something to help us. They do everything to achieve their this thing. Because you know this thing that being increased, like cement, food, and everything. This thing is not the achievement of the poor people or we there outside.
If they call today to say that because of the way things are, the Labour Congress says that you should shut down your business because there is going to be a nationwide strike, will you be involved in the strike? Would you come out for it? Okay, I think there's a communication gap somewhere.
For the strike, because I think you right.
So yes, hear you, Stanley. But thank you so much for calling. I think the underlying message of what he's trying to say is the general message we're hearing, that of despair of the Nigerian people, saying that they do not feel that the government has prioritized them and that the government has done what it takes to bring us out of where we are.
Yeah. So I was trying to make a point of what Ambode did, and people were breaking the wall simply because of the fact, and it's so annoying because they break these barriers just underneath the pedestrian bridge. So instead of taking the pedestrian bridge, but what will make the people know that it is important for them to take pedestrian bridge is when government stamps its feet on the ground and say, this is how I want things to be done. And of course,
yeah, go on. I mean, I just wanted to, sorry to...
No, it's all right.
But you also have the officials who equally are to blame in this. Because I do recall the Ojota incidents where you did have people who were supposed to follow the pedestrian bridge, but they chose to break and cross the express. And the law enforcers would grab hold of them and say, hey, you broke the law, but then again, find me something.
Yeah, that is...
Find me something. You find them something, they say, yeah, don't do it again.
This thing you have actually said is actually the reality in the Nigerian state today. Because most often, when the issue of palliative happened, and I said it on national television, that the people in authority, because when you say government, you are referring to the president and the governor. I want to believe they actually released some of the palliative. You know what happened? The community leaders, majority of them hoarded it from people. In areas where you even got to community development committees, your street and your estate leadership had it. So if you see the pattern of the grid, it's not limited to leadership in terms of who is the president or who is the governor. I say it that corruption has become a culture today. But the way out again is for people in authority to say, this is the direction we want to go. And why is everybody talking about this present administration not doing enough? Everybody knows that we will enter with the 8 years of Buhari, with what people have said. Everybody knows either it's Peter Obi that came to power, either it's Atiku, or even myself. We will get to this point we are in. The only difference will have been the fact that this government is not showing that it's actually tightening its belt in the way officials of government behave. That's just it. And it disconnected the people from having further belief in their nation. So the protest we are talking about, the agitation in the community, is not just about the fact that there's hardship. We cannot escape this hardship. But what we can escape is the behavioral pattern of the people in authority. And I think that's where we should concentrate on.
All right. Anyway, let's take a look at another newspaper very quickly. Let's take a look at the Daily Trust. Along with the Daily Trust, we'll be talking about a very recent incident that took place yesterday evening, where the president had called on a few stakeholders in the Nigerian economy and the federal government to meet and see the possibilities of ensuring that the country moves forward. Qatar backtracks, hosts Nigeria Business Forum. You know, the story had a back and forth situation where Qatar had indeed sent a communique saying that they would not be able to host the president because they were busy, they had other things and so on. And later on, a follow-up letter did come forward to say, okay, fine, we will try as much as possible to accommodate the president in line with this scheduled date that was indeed put together. Anyway, Nigerian Northern senators welcome ECOWAS lifting of sanctions. We did talk about that in the previous hour, just in case you missed out. Hardship, NLC mobilizes for protest despite federal government's warning. Gaza truce talks resume in Doha. Well, the front page, they could see the picture of those who ran and tried to get the bag of rice. 25 kg was going for 10,000 naira. As regards going for 80,000, or like Olive said, 90,000 naira.
I'm hoping that now that the naira has gained some strength, this collective cabal that you refer to will then reflect it in their prices.
The thing is that it even starts from what you're looking at from the front page of the newspaper, our attitude as a people. And when I hammer on the principle of leadership, it's not because I want you to turn around the present. It's because I want you to prepare the future for the people. Our behavior as a people has been hampered and tampered with the way leadership behaves. All the people you are seeing now, majority of them, I'm saying this without data, but I can beat my chest, we still go and resell it.
Of course.
They will resell it, and while reselling it, they will not consider that they got this at 10,000. They will resell it. It's a
greedy
mindset that we have as a people. Unfortunately, leadership is about leading from the front. So when people perceive, either truly or otherwise, that their leaders are not truthful, this is where acceptability comes in the principle of leadership. Once people perceive that their leaders are not truthful, then they begin to naturally cut corners. And that's the corner we are in now.
Although, to be honest, I think it's like a chicken and the egg situation, trying to decide which came first. Because when we look at it, the leaders are the same people that we are. The leaders came out from
followership.
Exactly. So it's not like the leaders came from abroad. These leaders are Nigerians. So this also shows that there's an underlying problem with our value system.
Of course.
You know, we're very lacking of integrity. We're lacking in integrity, in honesty, in empathy as a people. So our moral compass is quite broken. I don't know where we need to start fixing it, but maybe we'll go back to the primary schools and hope for the next generation.
There's a lot of work to actually be done. Yeah. But then again, let's see a clip of President Bola Tinubu where he had addressed a few respected Nigerians whom he called together yesterday evening, looking forward to reform Nigeria further and, of course, take us out of the current situation.
To look at what we are doing right and what we are doing wrong, to bring life back to the economy. Like I said many times, the people of this country are only the people we have to please. And we are very much concerned, from the students to mothers, fathers, the farmers, the traders, and realizing that every one of us, we have to fetch water from the same well. We are looking for additional efforts that might help the downtrodden Nigerians, and we will provide that hope and the assurance that the economic recovery is on its way. We are not saying that we have all the answers. but will not be blamed for not to try. We assure Nigerians that we will do our best to get our Marshall Plan in place and fashion out the best economic future for this country. I thank
The Federal Republic of Nigeria. Anyway, I like your reactions to that. I mean, he brought in the names from Tony Lumelu to Femi Otedola. You can name them. So many of them. And yeah, so many of them.
I was here some weeks back, and I actually suggested that this could be the way forward. I was also thinking that apart from assembling economic experts, you should also try to assemble those in the political circles who may have, who may not necessarily be part of your party, who may have answers to some of these things. But the funny thing about the conversation is the fact that I remember that politicians, when they are running for office, they have answers to all the questions. But suddenly when they get to power, they begin to struggle to get answer to some of these. You know, there was an interview he granted some time ago, I think in the UK, where he said he was the best and was willing to actually get. But I like the vulnerability. I like it when the president of a nation, a great nation like Nigeria, can come out. This is exactly what I said the other time. Can come out and say, okay, at this point, we do not have answers to all the questions. See, Nigeria is a very complex community, and we must accept that fact. Let me cite an example. I needed some dollar. So I went, of course, you know, you can never get it from the bank.
Nope.
So I was discussing with the popular Aboki guy, and because he likes me, he said, no, don't buy it yet. Wait, because it's going to come down. I mean, about a month or 2-3 months ago. Because of the policy of the federal government, there was a new policy where it crashed the unofficial market and leveled everything. The belief of the Hausa guy or the Aboki guy was once this is done, Naira is going to come down. That was his belief, and I believe also that is the belief of the government. But weeks after, everything went south. It shows that most of the time, the solutions that you have to Nigerian problem may not give you the solution. And that's why you have to think far ahead of the manipulators. You need to think far ahead those people who are doing everything to ensure that the economy remains the same.
All right, hold that thought. We have Sheriff calling from Ghana. Hello, Sheriff. Good morning. Thank you for calling, and please go ahead with your comment.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Please go ahead.
Please, I want to contribute to the discussion going on in your studio. So I want to talk in line with what the guest said. You know, Nigerians have been, if I'm talking, maybe my voice might blow up, is because I am angry. Nigerians have been plundered into a ditch. Everybody is now a criminal. Everybody is now a thief. We all want to survive. So because of that, we do things that are inhuman, even to our fellow Nigerians. We do things that are questionable. It's like we don't have conscience anymore. My son was...
Yes, Sheriff. Oh, seems like we've lost that call. Thank you for calling from Ghana.
She made,
I think she was making very
she made one very important point. The situation of the nation, continuous situation of the nation, has put the people in a certain cage. And this is an example I'm going to cite. I saw a video of an accident where people were burnt and people were walking on the dead body to scoop for it. Yeah. You and I know that you will not go and scoop for it. It shows that what is driving us as a people now is not a quest for success. Nobody is looking for success. We are only looking for survival. And once you get to a community where everyone is after survival, greed level increases. Because the thing is that I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that I survive. And there are three-dimensional poverty. that I've noticed in the nation. There's a deliberate kind of poverty where people in authority cage followership in poverty so that they can continue to manipulate them in the time of selection, election, and decision. There's a spiritual poverty, and it doesn't have anything to do with religion. It is when poverty soaks your spirit, and the only thing you are thinking about is survival. We are in it. And when you compare the reality of the poverty of the people and the reality of the resources that nature has gifted them with, you continue to shake your head.
I mean, if we go back and revisit the numbers that the Bureau of Statistics had given us when they said 133 million Nigerians were multidimensionally poor, I'm sure the numbers have changed.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have a middle class at this point. It's like there's just one big divide, the rich and the poor. We used to have middle class, but we don't have that. We'll head to the Guardian newspaper, but let's take this call from Agum Madu. Good morning. Thank you very much for calling. Please go ahead with your comments.
Your call has been placed.
I'm afraid.
Okay.
I guess a dropped call there. All right.
All right. Let's head to the Guardian newspaper and see what the front page is saying. On the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning, the big story says, FX crisis, Nigeria falling out of top 4 African economies on weak currency. And I think that this is good news. You know, we are falling out. I want to believe that, you know, that looks like better news for us, that the Naira is doing stronger. Nigeria's nominal GDP, there's a picture over there. And we can also see here what the numbers are saying. So in 2004, it was 130 Naira to the dollar, 130 Naira point 34 kobo. And now it's 2023 was 477 Naira. Unfortunately, in 2024, it's a different ball game. Emerging prospects, challenging of state police amid legislative traction. If you recall, the conversation of the bill about state policing is still in the House. ASU warns of imminent strike over alleged insensitivity by the federal government. I'll continue with the front pages, but let's hear from Sherry, who's calling from Ghana. Please go ahead, Sherry.
Please, sorry, the call went off while I was talking.
Can you please speak up? We're struggling to hear you.
Okay, sorry, the call went off while I was talking.
Yeah,
Sorry
welcome back.
Like I was saying, Nigeria is about the only country under the sun that is not developing. Every other places, people are developing their countries. It's only in Nigeria that there is no kind of development going on in Nigeria. How can we still be talking about life? How can we still be talking about roads? The government will reach themselves into the office, and all of them are sold to contractors. All of them, I build this road, 37-kilometer road. I build 27-kilometer road. They're all building roads. There's no development. Look at all the old governors that were in governance after before 1999. They always, you can see, Imo Airport, you see boating of the airport on Tuesday. It's all old construction. Third mainland bridge, fourth mainland bridge, they have been building it since 1942. Nothing can be done. Nothing is getting done. Look at what Ababdo is doing. Everybody is serving everybody all to their pockets. Just like she was saying, talking about people who cannot be in this political party and be this political party. Look at weekend. We don't have anything. We don't have anybody to look up to. So we're all going to be criminals. We're all going because we will survive. We have to survive. So when the man is saying that because it's a culture, they say culture will be something for breakfast. Because the culture of Nigeria, we are all going to be criminals. Because we have to survive. You can't watch your flat slip away when they are driving in SUVs, their families are abroad. Look at Sheyi. Who is Sheyi? People to come and be telling Nigerians to have patience. Who is he? They should differentiate family and governance. Tinubu should wake up and do the work he took himself there to do. Him and INEC chairman, just told them to sit up and do the work, and they should get out. Because right now we are white. Nigerians are white. And nobody can stop the whiteness. Except the 50s. Like I was saying, there's no consequence for anything. If they build bridge, we have to blame the bridges and pass.
Sherry.
I'm sorry I am shouting and screaming, but I am in pain. The way Nigeria is going is that we don't have a future and we don't know when the thing is going to end. Thank you very much. I think that I did a very good job because if I'm a journalist, like Bernard, they would have killed me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
One, please.
Just your reaction, please.
Yes, we should. I just quickly need to correct something. Nigeria is actually developing. The only disconnect is that there's no sense of urgency attached to our development. That's why a particular road can be built for 10 years, when in actual fact, it can be built within 3 months. And the tactics of corrupt people in government is that once they make a budget, for example, I'm going to tar this road from here to here for 13,000 naira. They know if they delay it for 3 years,
they can keep getting 13,000 naira.
You understand? They just put more money on it. And that's the situation we have on the East-West Road. It's one of the most popular roads in Nigeria today, but it's taken over a decade to be fixed. So it's the sense of urgency that we need to attach to our project, our program, and policy that we need to talk about.
I wish we could go ahead with this conversation, but our time is well spent. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a very fruitful conversation, and we must say thank you to all the callers and those who tried calling as well but couldn't get through. Thank you once again for being here.
It's a pleasure.
All right, we have another conversation to go into. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we will jump into it right away. Stay with us. It's Breakfast Central on News Central. All right, let's go straight to our conversation this morning. Our final lap. An All Progressives Congress governorship aspirant in Edo State, Dennis Idahosa, has described the result of the Thursday primary that declared Senator Monday Okpebolo winner as fictitious. That's what he said, in quotes. We'll recall that Cross River State Governor Senator Basio II, who was the chairman of Edo APC's fresh poll, announced the results after collation from the 18 local government areas.
Okpebolo polled 12,433 votes to defeat Idahosa, a representative of Ovia constituency in the House of Representatives, who scored 6,541 votes. Similarly, barely 24 hours after Olumide Akpata emerged as a candidate of the Labour Party in the September 21st governorship election in Edo, the Alhaji Lamidi Apapa-led faction has also unveiled its candidate for the election. Well, let's discuss this and bring in our guest. Andrew Nwanta is a constitutional lawyer and the former commissioner for communication, and orientation in Edo State. Good morning, Mr. Nwanta. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
First of all, we apologize on behalf of Mr. Osianeni, who was meant to be here, but said he had a flight to catch this morning. Because this was supposed to be a continuation of the conversation we had from last week, Friday. Yeah. Of course, looking at the updates that have happened over the weekend. But this parallel party elections that we're starting to see, is this the norm that we should come to accept? Because the same thing that we saw play out in the APC, we saw a repeat in the PDP, and now the Labour Party has announced at different points 3 winners of the party primary elections. Is it not a norm that we have to come to terms with?
I'll start by saying that what gives birth to parallel primaries is when you have factions in your party. And I will quickly mention one very important common denominator that runs through 2 of the major political parties, namely the PDP and the Labour Party. It is not in contention that in Edo State, PDP has 2 factions, one led by the governor and the other led by Chief Danobi. In Chief Danobi's faction, you have the state secretary and other members of the state working committee. In the governor's faction, you have the chairman of the party, Dr. Tony Azegbemi, and I think lately the organizing secretary, Chief Tony Aneni's son, Tony Aneni Jr., Ose's elder brother, is also part of that other faction. And they have 2 factional secretariats. The governor's faction secretariat is along Airport Road, former APC state secretariat. And of course, the one recognized by the national body is the one at Akwapaba, along Akwapaba. So when you have 2 factions like that, for those of us who are watchers and followers of the politics of Edo, we will not be surprised if they have 2 factional candidates. And the same applies to the Labour Party. They have 2 factions. Of course, you know the Lamidi Apapa-led faction. They have a state ESCO, and of course, the Abure faction having its own state ESCO. But of course, in the APC, I'm not saying because I'm with them. But the truth is, they don't have factions. You have only one single ESCO. Our friend and brother, Dennis Dausa, you don't expect somebody not to be successful and after so much hope of becoming the governorship candidate, and that hope is dashed. It's expected for him to protest. It's part of the beauties of democracy. And what does that protest amount to? He's trying to say that in the majority, in the democracy, the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. My friend and brother, Tony Kabaka, who followed him to the National Secretariat, who was the main person, the state youth leader of the APC, has come out openly to congratulate the winner of the election. And he has encouraged all Edo youths to rally behind the APC candidate, Senator Monday Ukweru. And more persons have been sending their messages. Virtually all the aspirants have congratulated the winner. And that is the beauty of democracy. It is one person that will end up as the candidate at the end of the day. So why tear the roof down when you know that ultimately in the future, you can also have the opportunity of presenting yourself for election? He's a member of the House of Reps. I think that is where his attention should be. His people in Ovia federal constituency have elected. He should go and represent them. And I think at the end of the day, we'll bring everybody under one roof. We're all one family. Ultimately, the vision is remove the PDP government from Osadebe Avenue. And the mission is September 21st, we'll mobilize Edo people to say no to Obaseki's third term. He wants continuity. Aswa Godalo, the chairman of his Alagodaro group, wants to continue from where he stopped. And the people are saying no. There's no single economic investment that attracted to the entire Central District called Edo Central, where the agitation for past shift is moving towards. After Godalo is from that area, nothing to show for it. They tell us they are technocrats. Technocrats that have refused to bring development to our state. And that is the common cry of Edo people. They are saying no to continuity, and they are going to vote for a candidate who is a homeboy, a candidate that understands the plight of Edo people, a candidate that will be very transparent in the way government business is done.
Just to quickly clarify, Mr. Nwata, is your grounds against Aswa Ighodalo, is it more about the person or the party? I know you've also mentioned that you do not want Obaseki to continue a third term, but if Obaseki did not endorse Aswa Ighodalo and he came out independently, would you be okay with the people of Edo State, like you said? Would they be okay with Aswa Ighodalo, coming out and maybe potentially winning the elections?
In the last interview, I think that is why my brother may have escaped from the question, because he would have joined us virtually if he was really serious about it. I said he's a business partner of Obaseki, and I want to prove it on national TV, because I think that is why you told me to come back.
You probably should prove it, and he would watch it and then come back to react.
They were members of the economic team of Ushomole. They promised attracting investments, bringing ShopRite, Gele Seaport, they will put an airport in Edo North. All those things were just fake and failed promises they made. As chairman of Obaseki's economic team, they now, from being the chairman of Olagodaro, they now established what they call a private company limited by guarantee. Year in, year out, they organize what they call an Alagodaro Summit. They sow Ashobi for people to come. They invite Dangote, even this last one, Dangote did not come because all the promises made were not fulfilled. They told us that they will build an innovation university in Benin. They will put a seaport somewhere in Gele. They will build an airport in Edo North. Where he comes from is Edo Central. Can Aswa tell his people in Edo Central the investment he has attracted to Edo Central as chairman of Alagodaro, the economic team of Obaseki? I am aware as commissioner that his law firm was doing loads of legal advisory services. Even Observer, I saw some documents as commissioners. So apart from the fact that Ben1, the company where he has interests, have been involved in cyber optic stuff, they said they are laying fiber optic cables. Over 10 billion naira has been spent. His bank, where he recently resigned from Sterling Bank, all Edo State government accounts, they operate all Edo State government accounts, and they collect all kinds of charges. Within a period, just as was reported in most of the media, close to 1 billion naira was collected as bank charges. So we cannot decide to privatize our state. It's a case of state capture. So himself and his board, Obaseki, cannot take Edo people for a ride. Obaseki cannot have tech time. I have nothing personal against that way. He's just a business partner of Obaseki that wants to continue from where Obaseki has stopped. And Edo people is saying enough is enough.
Just to clarify that all of this, all of the statements that you've made, just to clarify that all of the statements that you've made standpoints that you're willing to stand by and, have a conversation about, maybe prove when Ose Anini comes on the show to react to this?
As a matter of fact, even at Rice TV, on the morning show, it was discussed. This issue of bank charges is not, if you Google, that's why we have the Google search engine. These are facts in the public domain. They are facts in the public domain. My name is Ewanta. I speak truths and I stand for truth. Okay. And I'm ready to appear on your TV a million times to defend what I'm saying. I'm a lawyer. That's why I read law. I didn't read law to go and be playing politics. I read law to practice law and to stand for the rights of our people. We have a government that has refused to do anything positive. They have destroyed the judiciary. 8 judges were recommended for appointment. The governor has refused to swear these people in. Why? Because his candidate is not there. Why do you want to also control the judiciary? You prevented 14 lawmakers from occupying their seats. Today, as we speak, we have a House of Assembly that is a rubber stamp. So we want democracy to work in Edo. We don't want Obasaki to have a third term. And Edo people will say no to Obasaki's plan of leaving a surrogate in Usadebi Avenue when he leaves November 12th. And I think that is where the issues will be. A vote between continuity of the Obasaki government that operates with consultants and a vote for something new that will bring about a new and better Edo state.
All right. I mean, I've just been a mom, just trying to listen to your summation and your responses to the questions asked by Olive. My questions are, a bit out of the conversation so far. Let's go back to the Deputy Governor, Philip Shoaibu, and the incidents that took place that we discussed last week. Is there any way forward concerning the Deputy Governor and his decision to run for the Governor of Edo State? Any new updates?
It's quite factual if you say that the Deputy Governor he's in the race and he wants to become governor of Edo State. But because I'm not his official spokesperson, I will not be placed or in a better position to speak on that because I'm aware he has said he's going to court. And I'm also aware that he said he was elected as a candidate of the PDP. But what most people don't know is that because of the matter in court, the PDP was to present its certificate of return to whoever has emerged from his primaries Wednesday, the 28th, but I hear they've shifted it forward to Monday because we are going to court again on Wednesday, and there's a sister case that comes up today. So they are afraid that the court will give a final order, and as such, they are trying to, again, disobey a court order. So for me, that is not my party. The internal crisis of PDP is something that is peculiar to them, and whatever plans the Deputy Governor has, he will communicate that to the people, because I know over the weekend, he granted a press conference where he said certain things that if the PDP fails to give him being the candidate of the party, if they fail to, allow him to remain as the candidate of the party, of course, will go into some murky waters. That is to say, he was categorically saying that they will not have the candidates because of the matters in court. So I think the PDP should take a cue from the APC. They were able to resolve their internal issues that had to do with when 2 persons were declared candidates. They went back to the drawing board. The National Working Committee had to set up or reorganize the committee, and they went back to complete the process. The National Working Committee received the report of that particular process on Saturday. It was ratified. The winner was declared properly by the National Working Committee, Senator Mohammed Bin Hamad. Even the appeal report was submitted. They looked at it critically and said there was no merit. So I think the PDP ought to copy from what the APC has done. They have to put their own house in order. Last year's election, we had matters that went to court. They dragged this matter up to the Supreme Court. At the end of the day, PDP lost their election woefully because they went into the election with a divided house. So I don't need to tell them what to do. They know what to do.
All right. We've seen Honorable Okwebola, who has emerged as the APC governorship candidate. Does this in any way still affect your decision to leave the party, or do you think everything would indeed work fine, especially with your initial plans?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. I must quickly say that I raised an alarm, and that alarm, the president, as the leader of our party, the father of the country, and the party responded. From the one, Mohammed was a man that I admired, and I was supporting him, and I didn't hide the fact that I was with him. So if you are in my position, you gave the party notice. I didn't capture that thing I put out as a letter of resignation. It was a notice. I gave the party a notice, and the party responded. If a landlord gives his tenants 30 days quick notice because he has failed to pay his rent, and the tenant now pays his rent, would the landlord not withdraw the notice? And I think that answers my...
So you have withdrawn, in other news, you have withdrawn your notice and you're back with your family.
My leader told me that they didn't accept my resignation one, right? I requested that my name should be deleted. They said, after all, you provided the documents we used for registration when you joined the party. I have 10 wards in my local government. I provided 10 documents for them to do party registration. They said, it is your document now, so I will really delete your name from your document that you donated to the party. And I think I have to listen to my followers, I have to listen to my leaders, and of course, that notice has been withdrawn.
Okay, can you categorically say that the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress are not two sides of the same coin? Because that's the perspective that a number of Nigerians have about them on the national level and on the state level. How different are they in Edo State?
I have to be very honest. I think both parties are still two sides of the same coin, because the problem we have in our politics is that they lack ideology. And the reason why we can change that narrative is when the likes of me and others, men of goodwill, come to change that narrative. And again, we want to use Edo as a test case, that it is possible for things to be done properly. And it is not ghosts or spirits that make up political parties, it is individuals. So if men of goodwill, men of ideas come in, that is where we can make a big difference. And that does not change the fact that some of us are still very independent-minded. If our party is on the wrong track, we will say it the way it is. If our party is on the right track, we will say it the way it is. So having said what I said previously, I still take that same stand that we don't have political parties with ideologies. So we need individuals of goodwill to bring about a complete transformation, a complete reformation of the existing political structure. And I think Mr. President means well for our country. If you notice, I've always said that the problem is not Mr. President, the people around him. And I hope that we will have a change of heart. And with the way and manner they responded to the agitation some of us made, I believe there's hope for Nigeria.
If there's one thing we can't take away from you, is the fact that you always say it the way it is. Thank you so much, constitutional lawyer, former commissioner, and of course, a astute APC member.
You have to keep that in.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I am. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
It's good to have you always.
Okay, so it's been a full conversation, no doubt, and we've had it here this morning. How funny, time flies very quickly. I was going to look at the possibility of taking one very good story, but then again, I think we'll leave that for tomorrow. We want to say thank you for joining us. It's been a fantastic show, no doubt. But before we go, let's let you in on some of the programs that we'll be showing and coming up here on News Central.
Later today on News Central at 11 a.m. we bring you Business Edge. At 4:30 p.m. West African time, East Central will bring you the biggest entertainment stories, and Politics HQ comes your way at 7 p.m. West African time. Thank you very much to everyone who's called in to join the show today, to our callers, to our guests, and to those who are watching us on DSTV as well as on YouTube from around the world. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Olive Emodi, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm Joe Hansen, always telling you to do well to join us every morning, Monday through Friday. Plus, we have some new things coming up on The Breakfast Show, so you do not want to miss. We'll take it here and anchor on this note. Don't forget to stay safe, and if you must join the protest tomorrow, we'll find out today if it will still hold. We'll find out. Au revoir. Bye-bye.